My name is Naomi Bell. I'm 28 years old, and this is how I took revenge on the cousin who mocked me for being adopted. Until she found out the truth about herself. I was parked outside the reunion for a solid 5 minutes before I got out. My hands were shaking, clutching the lemon tart I'd made from scratch. The one my aunt asked me to bring if I had time. I always had time. I was the one who always showed up, always tried. And yet, every time I stepped into that house, it felt like walking into a spotlight I didn't ask for. Inside, everything looked exactly like every other family gathering. Noise, warmth, the clatter of casserole dishes, people hugging too long. For a second, I let myself believe this time might be different. That maybe, finally, I'd feel like one of them. And then I heard her. Look, everyone. The stray has arrived. Be nice. She's not blood, but she tries hard. Laughter. Awkward. Unsure, but enough to make my stomach drop. There she was. Brielle. Tall. Perfect. Loud. The family's star. My cousin. My reminder that no matter how hard I tried, I'd never be her. I smiled. That small, brittle kind you give when you pretend not to care. I placed my dessert on the table and went to sit down. But the dining room was full. As usual, I wandered until I found the little folding table in the corner, the one set up for the kids. I sat there, again, with paper plates and crayon-stained napkins, like I was still 8. Brielle passed behind me, leaning in just close enough to whisper, "Must suck not knowing where you come from." I didn't say a word. I didn't even flinch. I just stared straight ahead, my jaw tight. But inside, something finally snapped. I used to pray Brielle would see me as family. That if I just loved hard enough, stayed quiet long enough, she'd see me as a real cousin, a real Belle. But that day, I realized she never would. And that's when I stopped praying and started remembering. I grew up in a quiet suburb outside Asheville, North Carolina, the kind of place where porches mattered. Everyone knew your name, and secrets traveled faster than gossip. I was adopted at age 2 by Mark and Diane Bell, 2 of the kindest, most ordinary people you could ever meet. They couldn't have kids of their own, so they poured everything they had into me. My childhood was stable, safe, loved. But there were always small reminders that I didn't quite belong. I didn't look like anyone. My skin a few shades darker, my curls tighter. In every family photo, I was the puzzle piece that didn't match. No one said anything outright, of course, but glances, questions, and offhand comments filled in what silence didn't. And then there was Brielle, my aunt's only child, the first granddaughter, the natural heir. From the moment we were old enough to stand side by side, it was obvious who shined and who didn't. Brielle was tall, blonde, and camera-ready by the time she hit 2nd grade. She had that rare ability to be cruel and charming in the same breath, and she wielded both with practice. In school, she'd wave at me in the hallway just to tell her friends later that I was her charity case cousin. She once told me my drawings looked like Pinterest fails. I was 11. I wasn't confrontational. I was soft, quiet. I painted and read books and helped wash dishes after dinner. I didn't know how to fight back without feeling guilty. The family gatherings were always a tightrope walk. The adults raved about Brielle's science fairs, her soccer trophies, her prom photos. When I got accepted into a top art school in Savannah, I remember being so proud, until Brielle tilted her head and said, "Wow, you sure it wasn't a sympathy acceptance?" Even then, I smiled. Even then, I thanked her. Our grandmother, the matriarch, adored her. She once referred to Brielle as our golden girl while I was sitting 3 feet away. I laughed it off, like I always did. It was easier than letting it show. I graduated, moved out, built a modest life in Atlanta working as a freelance illustrator. I had a few good clients, a tiny apartment, peace. I rarely came home. When I did, it was out of duty, never expectation. Then, last fall, my mom called. She said they were planning a major family reunion, a big one, hosted at Aunt Carol's estate. Everyone would be there, even relatives from out of state. She said it would mean a lot if I came. I hesitated, but I missed them. And part of me, that soft, naive part that still wanted to belong, whispered maybe, just maybe, things could be different. What I didn't realize then was, I was walking into my final humiliation and my ultimate revenge. The reunion started off tense, but I told myself to breathe through it. I had brought a lemon meringue pie I made from scratch, the kind my dad loved, and even that was met with side eyes. Wow, domestic now, Brielle quipped, loud enough for everyone at the drinks table to hear. I laughed, brushing it off, but inside, my stomach tightened. Things got worse. During dinner, Brielle stood up and announced a fun little trivia game. Everyone groaned playfully, assuming it would be harmless. But halfway through the questions about family pets and vacation stories, she read one aloud with a smirk. Which cousin was adopted and still thinks she belongs? There was a beat of silence. Some people laughed, unsure, awkward. My mom looked horrified, but no one stopped her. I forced a tight smile, trying to act unfazed, but something inside me shifted. My hands started trembling. I excused myself, said I needed to use the bathroom, and quietly slipped out through the side door. I sat on the back patio, facing the woods, gripping the edge of the bench like it was the only thing keeping me upright. I thought that would be the worst of it, but as I made my way back inside to say goodbye, I caught voices down the hall. Brielle's voice. She's not one of us. She was a charity case. Mom only let her come because she felt bad for her parents. It's honestly pathetic how hard she tries. Like, girl, stay in your lane. There was laughter, not just hers. I didn't walk into the room. I didn't say a word. I just turned around and left. The drive back to Atlanta was a blur of headlights and rage. But somewhere around the state line, I remembered something, a throwaway comment from years ago, something my aunt had said during a particularly heated Thanksgiving argument when Brielle had embarrassed me in front of everyone. You're not the only adopted one in this family, sweetheart. At the time, I thought it was just meant to soothe me, a soft lie to make me feel less alone. But now, that line echoed differently. What if it wasn't a lie? What if there was something Brielle didn't know about herself? She mocked me for not knowing where I came from, so I decided to find out where she really came from. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I just started digging. It began quietly. I told my mom I wanted to put together a family scrapbook, a little history project, I said. She lit up, happy I was getting involved again. She handed me boxes from the garage labeled with years and holidays and relatives' names. I took everything. I combed through photos, old letters, home videos. I looked for one thing, proof of Brielle's birth. And oddly, it just wasn't there. There were pictures of my aunt and uncle in 1996 at a beach trip, a baby shower for someone else, a Christmas party, but none of my aunt pregnant. No bump. No birth hospital bracelets. No newborn pictures. The earliest photo of Brielle I could find was when she was about 6 months old, being held by my grandmother in a completely different house than the one they lived in then. That was weird, but not enough, so I went deeper. I drove to my grandmother's old house, which we hadn't cleared out fully since she passed. The attic was dusty and full of mildew-smelling boxes no one had opened in years. I spent hours up there, sneezing and sweating. Then I found it. A small beige folder inside a box marked Church Donations 1997, hidden behind receipts and event flyers. It had no label. Inside was a piece of paper. Asterisk certificate of adoption. Asterisk issued January 17, 1997. Name: Brielle Renee Morgan. Adoptive parents: Linda and Carl Jameson Morgan. That wasn't even their last name. My hands shook as I read it again. The birth date was exactly the same. The baby was adopted at birth from a local agency. Sealed records. Private placement. They'd hidden it completely. Even faked a birth announcement in the local paper. I sat on the attic floor with my legs crossed, staring at that certificate like it might catch fire. I thought about every cruel thing Brielle had ever said, every real family jab, every smug smile when I was excluded. And suddenly, I felt something sharp and hot in my chest. I knew what it felt like to discover you were adopted, to question your belonging, to wrestle with identity. I knew that pain, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But I also knew what it felt like to be humiliated, publicly, repeatedly, by someone who shared that truth but used it as a weapon against me. I held that certificate for a long time. I thought maybe I should just let it go, be the bigger person. And then Brielle posted something on Instagram. It was a picture of her and our grandmother, captioned, asterisk some of us come from real family, others were just delivered. Asterisk the comments were full of likes and heart emojis. A few laughing faces. I stared at it until my vision blurred. That settled it. If she wanted to shame me with origin stories, I'd give her one to choke on. Brielle's 30th birthday was the perfect storm of ego and opportunity. She planned it like it was the Met Gala, rented out a vineyard, hired a private chef, invited over 100 people, extended family flew in, photographers hovered, and every table had her initials in gold calligraphy. So when I offered to make a digital memory reel to play before the cake cutting, a nostalgic, sweet montage of her life, she beamed like I had finally accepted my place. She even hugged me, said, maybe you asterisk can asterisk be useful. I smiled, said nothing. For 2 weeks, I worked on the video. I gathered every family photo I could, clips from old camcorders, even filtered them with soft music and glowing transitions. But then, exactly 3 minutes and 12 seconds in, the tone shifted, the lights dimmed, the screen flickered. Guests leaned forward. It started soft. Baby pictures, toddler birthdays, ballet recitals. People smiled, clapped, then a still image, a document, faint, faded, but clear. Asterisk asterisk certificate of adoption asterisk asterisk name. Brielle Renee Morgan date. January 17th, 1997 adoptive parents. Linda and Carl Jameson murmurs. A few gasps. Heads turned. Necks. A scan letter from the agency confirming sealed placement. The screen zoomed in on the date. And then, my voice. Calm. Clear. Family isn't blood. It's love. And secrets don't erase the truth. Only delay it. People were frozen. You could hear the wind outside more than the party inside. Brielle shot up from her chair like she'd been burned. Turn it off. Turn it off. Her mother lunged for the projector table. Pulled cords. The screen cut to black. A beat of stunned silence, then someone clapped. Just once. And then whispers. Some people looked at me with wide eyes. Some nodded, like they'd always suspected something. Brielle stood in the middle of the room, trembling, mascara running. You vindictive little. But I didn't wait. I picked up my purse, walked past the champagne tower, and stepped out into the cool night air. She spent her whole life mocking me for being adopted. Turns out, I was just brave enough to admit it. Brielle's 30th birthday was the perfect storm of ego and opportunity. She planned it like it was the Met Gala, rented out a vineyard, hired a private chef, invited over 200 people. Extended family flew in, photographers hovered, and every table had her initials in gold calligraphy. So when I offered to make a digital memory reel to play before the cake cutting, a nostalgic, sweet montage of her life, she beamed, like I had finally accepted my place. She even hugged me, said, "Maybe you can be useful." I smiled, said nothing. For 2 weeks, I worked on the video. I gathered every family photo I could, clips from old camcorders, even filtered them with soft music and glowing transitions. But then, exactly 3 minutes and 12 seconds in, the tone shifted, the lights dimmed, the screen flickered. Guests leaned forward. It started soft. Baby pictures, toddler birthdays, ballet recitals. People smiled, clapped, then a still image, a document, faint, faded, but clear. *** certificate of adoption ** name. Brielle Renee Morgan. Date: January 17th, 1997. Adoptive parents: Linda and Carl. Jameson murmurs. A few gasps. Heads turned. Necks. A scan letter from the agency confirming sealed placement. The screen zoomed in on the date. And then, my voice. Calm. Clear. Family isn't blood. It's love. And secrets don't erase the truth. Only delay it. People were frozen. You could hear the wind outside more than the party inside. Brielle shot up from her chair like she'd been burned. Turn it off. Turn it off. Her mother lunged for the projector table. Pulled cords. The screen cut to black. A beat of stunned silence, then someone clapped. Just once. And then whispers. Some people looked at me with wide eyes. Some nodded, like they'd always suspected something. Brielle stood in the middle of the room, trembling, mascara running. You vindictive little. But I didn't wait. I picked up my purse, walked past the champagne tower, and stepped out into the cool night air. She spent her whole life mocking me for being adopted. Turns out, I was just brave enough to admit it. The aftermath was swift and brutal, but not for me. Brielle's world cracked like cheap porcelain. The video leaked. Someone had recorded it on their phone. It hit a gossip blog, then a family forum, then spiraled. Her influencer brand, all about authenticity, legacy, and real roots, collapsed under its own hypocrisy. Sponsorships dropped. Comments turned ruthless. She vanished from Instagram, deleted TikTok, radio silence. I didn't chase the attention, didn't issue a statement or clap back. But quietly, I grew. Relatives began reaching out, first with silence, then with softness. A few apologized, not just for the party, but for a lifetime of side eyes and half smiles. Some confessed they'd always known the truth about Brielle. Others said they suspected. but didn't think it was their place. I thanked them, but I didn't pretend it made things right. Instead, I started something new. I launched a podcast, soft-spoken, quiet, raw, about identity, adoption, family wounds, and healing. I told my story, invited others to tell theirs. It took off fast. Messages poured in from people who'd felt invisible, unloved, unsure of where they belonged. I wasn't hiding anymore. And no, I didn't gloat over Brielle's humiliation. I didn't mention her name, didn't dwell in her silence. But I didn't fix it either. She handed me the shame, and I returned it in truth. I didn't want her to hurt. I just wanted her to stop hurting me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the outsider. I wasn't someone's pity or someone's punchline. I was just Naomi, not in spite of being adopted, but because I made that part of me my power, my legacy. A few months later, I walked into a small independent bookshop downtown, the kind with creaky floors, handwritten signs, and the smell of old pages and fresh coffee. Near the checkout counter, tucked beside the journals and enamel pins, was a small display. My podcast merch, a sticker with my logo, a postcard with my face, a tote bag that read, * roots grow in all directions. * The clerk looked up, did a double take, and smiled. You're Naomi, right? I listened to your episode about chosen family. It made me cry. I smiled back, warm but quiet. Thank you, I said. That means a lot. Outside, as I left with a bag of books and a heart that finally felt light, I saw a mom and her daughter walking hand in hand. The little girl was maybe 8, curly-haired like me, brown-skinned like me. Adopted. I could tell. The way she clung to her mother's arm, not out of fear, but fierce, stubborn love. She glanced at the window where my podcast logo was painted and tugged her mom's sleeve. She looks like me, she said, beaming. I paused. My throat tightened. The mom noticed me and gave a small, knowing nod. I nodded back, and for a second, a single, sacred second, I felt everything I had once begged for. Recognition, belonging, pride. I whispered to myself as I watched them disappear down the street. I used